Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Del A.D. Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so excited to have Jules Swales with me today. Jules is an accomplished author, poet, writing teacher, and creativity coach. Her latest book, Dear God, Letters from an Agnostic, will be out next year. In addition to studying under method writing teacher Jack Grape since 2003, Jules has a 22-year history exploring the psychological world. She has an MA in spiritual psychology, and after her introduction to the Three Principles, she spent 2 years as Dickon Bettinger's apprentice. Using a combination of her understanding of the Three Principles and method writing, Jules teaches a unique virtual class to people all around the world for all levels of writers. Jules also volunteered at Venice High School, where she taught writing to students who are part of the POPs program.
Hi, Jules. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm very excited about this. As I said to you in the email, we're going to need about 4 hours for us to talk about everything that you're up to in life, or things you have been up to in your life too, growing up. So you've led a fascinating life. But I'd like to give me a little bit of background, and then also what led you to the principles. I know you've had a long and varied path like I have. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Lots of life material, in all of our lives, right? So I met Dickon quite a while ago through Steve Chandler. So Steve and I had been, having a meditation conversation for a while, and he said, I think you should talk to my teacher, Dickon. And I didn't know anything about the Three Principles. I was just looking really at how to live more in that little space between the spiritual nature of myself and my psychology as a human, that little place between those two, which I think Sid Banks talks about quite a bit in The Missing Link. So I had a conversation with Dickon, and I thought his name was a little strange, but okay, Steve said, and that was in November. And then I think in January, I was up in Lacona doing an intensive with Dickon. Like I said, not because I was really looking at the Three Principles or had seen him at a conference or anything, but just because on Steve's recommendation, I was like, okay, well, I'll go check this guy out. And it's quite a funny story because, I like to think I'm spontaneous, but here I was going up to Seattle to meet this guy with this sort of strange name. And, I'm sort of pragmatic and was expecting him to be organized and have an office and, certifications on the wall behind him as we sat in this office. And we get there and, I was like professionally 5 minutes on time, before time. And he's like, hi, Jules, big hug. Come meet my wife, Koizi. Let's show you her painting. I'm thinking, well, hang on, now we're on my time now. Anyway, so this went on for quite some time. Would you like tea? Would you like water? Let's have a chat. And I kept saying, well, thinking to myself, when are we going to get started? Where's the office? So then Dickon says, would you like to have a seat on the sofa? I'm thinking, the sofa? Where's the office with the desk and everything? Surely he's not going to do this on the sofa. So I sit on the sofa and I pour some water out. Now Koizi's in the kitchen and it's their open plan, as she's making whatever she's doing. I'm thinking, this is not right somehow. And then Dickon just stares out the window in Dickon fashion, And I said, I couldn't bear it any longer. I said, Dickon, what are we going to do? It was so uncomfortable. And he just turned to me and said, I don't know, Jules, but I do know that at some point one of us is going to start talking. And he had me then, because his absolute complete faith that something was going to happen yeah.
Mm.
So then I started, working with Dickon for a while, a number of years, and then ended up his apprentice for 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's such a beautiful story, and I think we can all relate that. Yeah, definitely three principles teachers are. It isn't that, as you said, the office starting at a certain time. Here's material. It's all about just being in the feeling and talking and absorbing, and sharing love. So
I think if I had been to a conference or knew anything about it, I would understand, but my psychology training was just like, let's get to the point, let's get on with this. What are your issues? Let's talk about them.
Yeah.
The idea, even though I have, my spiritual psychology masters, but the idea of just pointing somewhere else and almost waiting to be led, that was a really interesting experience for me, and something that I've taken with me in life since then.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. How did it impact? I mean, you're an amazing writing teacher. I can say firsthand because I'm one of your students.
Thank you.
And I've seen such a massive shift in my ability to write. But I know you studied with Jack Grape since 2003. So how did the marriage of what you were already so I'm assuming that you came across the principles after you started working with Jack, is that right?
Yeah.
How did coming across the principles, how did you sort of marry the two together?
That's a really good question. I'd like to say that I suddenly had like an aha moment, like so many people in the 3P community have. My 3P experience was a slower burn, and so was my working with Jack. Initially, I was a little deer in headlights when I did the entry level. So I tried to be mindful of that, with my entry level students. The invitation to access material from my life through, learning the deep voice, which you know what that is, was kind of a little destabilizing to me at the beginning and very emotive for me. But then over the years, what started to happen is the more I focused on the exercises, there was this space occurring. So I would use the material of my life for the exercises, not my past, let's say, but the material from my life experience, and not consciously sit down to choose that material beforehand, but it would show up because it's part of the fabric of my life. It's part of my painter's palette, they're my colors that I use. And then I started to notice over time that I had less of an emotional response to the work, the writing work, my art, my craft, which was writing. I was less, discombobulated afterwards. And so I became very familiar with accessing my past experiences, material of my life to write with and write through. So then consequently, when I found the three principles, the conversation of mind and pausing, and Dickon saying what he said when we first met, something's going to happen. There was a sense of familiarity. Okay, that's where we're looking. And when I'm teaching, that's where I'm looking for my students and for myself. Yeah, somewhere that's beyond ego and beyond the desire to be good human, good writer, good art creator. Just the place that is always there for us. I call it creative genius. Some people call it God. Other people call it mind. Whatever it is, we're all looking and pointing and trying to language something that we can't put language on. But when you experience it, you're like, that's what it is. Well, for me, that comes from writing.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And as a student of yours, I know that I think we had a few struggles when my ego would want to come in and was judging and doing all these things. But it is amazing. I always remember you saying one of the first classes, it's like, when you allow that creative genius to come through you, you will produce work that you could never, ever do from the intellect or from the personal mind. It's so much bigger, so much more profound, so much better. So I've really learned to sort of, set that part aside. Not to say it's always on the side. It definitely comes back in. I had a difficult time writing my newsletter this weekend, more than usual. And I went, oh my God, it's because I'm coming at it with an idea of what I want to say rather than allowing it to just emerge through me. So it was
exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's why people can't have writer's block if they understand how to write like this, because you can never sit down and not have something. We only get into trouble, like you said, when we're trying to manufacture what we want to write about. Now, sometimes if we have a deadline and we have a topic that we're writing into, we have to do that. I will start a little bit early so that I can, settle in. Where am I right now? Where am I emotionally? Where am I physically? What am I drinking? Did I have lunch? I'll settle in with some of those things. And then the topic will show up on the page without any muscling from me. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting because, I work, as you know, with a lot of people who are in the 3P community. And I think it's a stumbling for them initially when they realize I am going to say you have a past and we are going to play with it. And to me, it doesn't make any sense that we don't look there, because I'm a feeling person.
Yeah.
And everybody is, we all feel our way through life. And the Justice, William O'Donnell, I think his name was, he said that 90% of every decisions made at the Supreme Court are made emotionally. And 10% of the extra time is made up trying to justify the emotional decisions.
Wow.
Which is
interesting.
I know, right? But it can't not be, because we are feeling, we feel the world, mm-hmm. which is sometimes where I find the 3 principles misses the point of feeling, because it doesn't mean we're just always feeling joy-filled and happy and one with God. Feeling is all of it. It's the dirty, gritty humanness. Yeah. And I see a lot of people and a lot of my students who part of the 3P community kind of in judgment to when they're not feeling great because somehow they've tripped up with their thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a misunderstanding when you first come to the principles. I really do, that having a busy mind is not a good thing, or people come in thinking, gosh, I'm just going to have nice experiences from now on. I'm going to be very zen. And what I sort of see more and more and more is just how beautiful life is. And we would never have been created as human beings if there were, with the vastness of the array of different emotions and feelings we can have. If some of them were good and some of them we're not supposed to have, it's like, no, we're supposed to have all of it. Just like you said, it's the paint box. It's like, we need depth, color, shadow, shade. We need all that as well. Who wants I certainly don't want a painting full of pretty pastel colors. When I love the darkness.
I think we do, Del. And I adore the fact that you've got this new program out, which is going to support so many people. I love that you're talking about stuff like that, which hasn't been talked about enough in my mind. In this community, there is a sort of, pastel approach. And, and then when something happens where we're not feeling great, now we have a lot of thinking about our thinking. Yes. And, I think this, to me, this is also people who've been around for a while. There's still this kind of, vanilla aptitude. And yes, you and I are very similar. Does it feel good not to feel great? No, but nobody said life is just about feeling good. Jack Cornfield, the mindfulness teacher, he says that it's like we live in an airbag society, right? And I think that's kind of interesting. It's almost like a comfort culture. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm not feeling good. I'm too hot. Let me turn the AC on. I'm too cold. Let me put the heater on. Let me get my bed pillow just right. Yeah. We want comfort. And I think that it's brilliant to write because if you write your resilience almost onto the page, because the exercises that I offer up require that. They require people to be willing to access all the landscapes of their experience. Yeah. I actually have a conversation with 3P people sometimes beforehand, and I warn them ahead of time that this class comes with a warning label. You will probably end up feeling at some point. It's not therapy, but it can sometimes feel like it can sometimes feel therapeutic because we're creating art. And art is made of conflict, drama, and human struggle, right? It's all of it. So
I love that. And I say the same to my clients. I just say, listen, I'm not the usual 3P teacher. We're going to go back into your history. I want to know where this thinking first took place, so we know where to surgically go and question it. But we've got to dig it up. We've got to find what is festering in there that's causing you to sort of experience codependency or narcissistic abuse. I mean, I need to go back there. It's like, I don't want to just be sitting there going, it's just your thinking. So I want to actually go a little bit about, you do some volunteer work with is it POPs or POP students at Venice High School? And I'd love to know a little bit about that and how you found yourself there teaching them method writing.
I'm currently not there right now, but it's one of those, I didn't want to do it. So I probably didn't really want to go meet Dickon the first time. But I used to drive past Venice High School when I went to Venice Beach. And for some reason, I kept hearing this voice inside saying, go to the school. Well, I have, what some might call some high school karma. And there's no way I wanted to go to Venice High School. The police car's outside, and I'm all white and with an English accent. I was like, no, thank you very much. But that went on for about 3 or 4 months. I finally called and spoke to the counselor, left her a voicemail, said, I don't know why, but I keep driving past the school. You probably think I'm crazy, but I'm really not. I think somehow I could be of assistance at the school. Of course, I didn't hear back. This Venice High School, who is this person? But I was persistent because I kept having insights and I couldn't avoid them. So long story short, I ended up there one day to meet somebody who I didn't know. This was after 6 months of being passed around to department. I was told by this one chap in an email, just be at this classroom at noon on a Wednesday. And, I was quite frightened. I didn't know what it was about, but I trusted that something would happen. So I ended up in the classroom. When it turned out, it was the POPs program. And these are for children who have a family member or a friend who's in prison. It's called Pain of the Prison System. I would have liked the title to have been different to that, but it was obviously made long before I was part of that. And so I volunteered, first of all, serving lunches to these kids. They'd come in during their lunch break and they would write about their life experiences and write in a way that they had never been invited to before. And what I didn't know, I found out after a few weeks, was that they were children who have a family member or friend in prison. What the POPs program didn't know about me was my husband went to prison. So it was just kind of remarkable, the synergy of that. And then the director said to me, well, how are you here, Jules? Did you get vetted? And I said, no, I just walked in off the street one day. And he's like, what? You haven't had a background check done? I said, no, just walked in. Here I am. And we all knew that something greater than ourselves had occurred to make that happen. And I won't, bore you with all the details of how terrified I was at the beginning. But then they found out that I also teach writing. And because this is a writing program where they put anthologies out every year, these students, I quickly became one of the students' teachers for writing. Talked a lot about my prison experience, obviously, not my prison experience, my ex-husband's. And that helped the students relate to me in a way they probably couldn't before. And I did end up, because of the 3P, my 3P understanding, a couple of the students who had more challenging times, I did get appointed to work with them. And I think it was just almost destabilizing for them when I said, I don't see that there's anything wrong with you. There is nothing about you that I would change. And they thought I was a psychologist and was going to analyze the arse off them to some degree. But when they saw that I genuinely didn't see that. I saw them. And I saw all the potential that there was there. And so, yeah, I did that for a while. I was very blessed to be part of that community.
Wow. So you've had quite the adventurous life. I know you said it's given you lots and lots to write about. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Anything else you want to share about what's contributed to who and where you are today?
It all has. When like some people ask me sometimes, would you like your life to have been any different? And I can honestly say, hand on heart, no, because what would I write about if it had been different to how it was? I guess I wish that I had known what I knew now when I was raising my stepchildren. Perhaps that would have been helpful. When their dad went to prison, I could have supported them in a different way. I mean, I did the best I could. But it was a very psychological conversation we were having during those years. Mm-hmm. I'm not married to the 3 Ps. Right now I'm doing a self-awareness training with Tara Brach, and I meditate every day. I have done for 30 years. And, I know a lot of people in the 3P community are like, oh, no meditation. But, every time you fall out of thinking, my take on this is every time we fall out of our personal thinking, we're in meditation.
Absolutely.
Right. So to walk through the world, meditating my way through the world is kind of what my aim is. And that way, that kind of speaks to something greater than even the 3 principles, just the wonderment of the privilege of being alive. And then how do I capture that, when I sit down on paper, how do I capture that to write about and share it? And how do I teach it? And how do I see that for other people when they start my classes? And just the absolute wonderment of being alive right now, not right now, but being me in this body at this time. So yes, I mean, on paper, when I sent my email to you with the things that have been part of my material, I was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting to see. And I'm proud of being sober, Del.
Yeah.
I'm proud of being sober.
Ugh. I was going to ask you about that. It feels like so many creative people, writers, artists, struggle with having had dependency issues in their life. And it feels to me that there's a depth of feeling that can somehow in younger years feel overwhelming. And so I think it is, again, to go back to the principles, but there is something that makes sense about reaching out for something to help sort of, calm that storm down. I mean, I know later in life we find other ways to do it, but I think it's just perfectly understandable. I know for myself, I was numbing out completely in my 20s, on many different things. Some of my vices still carry with me. I do like my glass of wine, but it was the 80s and there was, drugs and things like that when I first got here. What I was going to say about, what I love about the principles and what it's taught me is that, or what I see now, and again, I think there is a misunderstanding with some new people that come in, but I had an experience of a week or so ago of feeling it was about sort of racism, and I got some white supremacist messages to me very nicely because I put a Black Lives Matter frame around my face, and it brought up so much in me, having been in an interracial relationship before myself, my first couple of years with my boyfriend, it brought up a lot, but I found myself. So I was crying, I was shaken, felt immense amounts of love, immense amount of compassion, and it was like I was able to sit back and let everything I wasn't for one second detached, but I wasn't resistant to any single emotion that I could feel. It was all welcome. And I remember as I rode this ride for this day, a feeling, oh my God, I'm so privileged to be alive that I get to feel all of this and experience and not want to overcome any of it or push it down or deny it or move through it faster.
Layer it with a lot of thinking, you know. Yeah. I think that's what Sid Banks meant, you know. I don't claim to know, obviously, I never trained with him, but I think when he said if only people weren't afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. That to me is the most powerful quote of any of his. I have it around in my house. It's not saying the experiences don't happen and you know, if you're feeling lousy about something, you haven't been mindful enough about your thinking. It says exactly what you're pointing to now. It's going to happen. You know, you're going to suffer. And we shouldn't try to pretend that's not going to happen. It's part of the experience when you're in suffering. You know, if you could suffer more if you pile a whole bunch of thinking on top of that. If you can just, like you said, sit back. And sometimes, you know, I can't even do that. And it's okay. It's like, I just want sort of a lot to give myself permission for it all to be as it is. And coming back to your comment about writing, I think I wrote myself out of suicide more than once. You know, I feel like that it was very challenging to be in this body for a long time when I was younger. And yes, I sort of did all the things you do, you know, I numbed with this and that and something else, whatever I could find. And if I couldn't find a substance, I'd find a person, you know, but
me too.
Yeah. But writing was always my first lover. And I didn't write well, but I had to do it. I had to put it somewhere. You know, so it was so beautiful for me when I met Jack. And I had done other writing programs, but nothing that really invited me to explore all of that a bit more deeply while I was learning to be a better writer. And people want to read good writing where they can relate to, writing that's about drama, conflict, and human struggle, because that's what they're experiencing. We're all experiencing at some point in our lives drama, conflict, and human struggle. I might not be experiencing it today, but I might or at this moment, I may in an hour or so. And as you know, we use it as our craft. We entertain through it and we teach through it because we want people to say, oh yeah, I get that. I've noticed a difference in your writing, Del. Like you are, you know, I really, really like your blog posts. I think that they are so much more relatable than many that I read or that I've unsubscribed to. I haven't unsubscribed to yours because it touches me. And you're doing a great job of sharing about the person that you've been in conversation with, but then also sharing yourself in a revealing way where I can say, oh, yes, me too. Then I trust you as a human being and I trust you as a writer because the writing is true, because the human being is true onto the page.
Well, unlike you, I didn't have to write. It was not my first love. It was always something that played in my mind, but I had so much thinking about, I'm not a good writer. And I just cannot thank you enough. Your classes are, I mean, beyond anything. I mean, I struggle, as you know, but they're just so unique. They just have this beautiful way of circumventing, as I said, the ego and the fear and whatever that thing is, and just accesses something inside you. And they are, and I love that you have so many different levels. And there are so many things to explore as a writer. So I completely and utterly credit you for me actually getting a newsletter out. I would never have had the courage to do it if it wasn't for your class. So, and I'm in the midst of writing my book too, which I know that you so very kindly offered to help maybe on the editing process with me. So we're going to be coming to the end of our show, but I want people that are listening to the podcast to know how to reach out to you. So give your website and what anything else that's coming up for you. I know you have workshops constantly, but let's know what's coming up.
Yeah, so thanks. So the next classes are the week of Labor Day here in the States, which I think we start on Wednesday, September 10th. It's for 8 weeks. And that's all of the classes, the advanced classes that you're in, and then my entry-level students. So the entry-level classes are Thursday morning, Pacific Standard Time. Some people are doing Wednesday afternoon as well. I've got a couple of students from Australia, and that's the best time for them. And I have an early bird special, which is over now, but I was thinking last night it might be quite fun to have like a late bird special.
Oh, I love that.
I only have 3 spots left. I can put somebody in Wednesday afternoon and 2 people in Thursday morning. But if anybody's interested, they can get in touch with me through juleswales.com, my website, or find me on Facebook and you can reach me there as well.
Okay, wonderful. I love that late bird special.
The late bird special. I thought, well, why not? It's never really, people say in LA, you should put your prices up. It really hasn't been about that for me. And if I can just say this quickly, Del, I was in a job here in LA for 26 years. And for a whole chunk of my time with Dickin, I was like, how am I going to get out of this job? How am I going to get out of this job? Dickin, we need some steps. If you don't help me, I'm going to go back to Steve Chandler and we're going to put get a board out and do pros and cons lists and next action steps and all of this. We used to have this whole joke about it. I was joking to some degree, but I also was quite serious. I was miserable. I didn't know how to be out of that job. I didn't have a job to go to even. Like Spirit hadn't said, okay, this is where you're going. I was just, doing my thing with Jack in class in LA. And then slowly something started to happen. Just as I knew it would happen, just as mind, God, spirit, creative genius works, little breadcrumbs for me to pay attention to. If my mind was quiet enough, little breadcrumbs. Well, maybe you could do this. Well, maybe you could do this. Well, how about you do this? And now here we are, 3 years later, only 3 years later. And I'm having to, offer new classes all the time. And I left and retired from my job last year. And this is what I do now. And people ask me often who want to leave their jobs, well, how did you do it? And I didn't do it. I stopped wanting to do it. I stopped the voices inside that were saying to me, well, I don't like this job. What am I going to do? How am I going to take care of myself? I'm a single woman. I stopped that. I stopped the moaning, all the human grumbling and moaning about what wasn't right and how was I going to fix it? I would say I have a pretty developed cerebral cortex. And so if I want to create something and make something happen, I usually can. But I knew it wasn't going to come from there. But not knowing what was going to happen was frightening as all merry hell. But something just kept building. So it's not that I can actually sit back and have a huge party with myself about my program, because it didn't come through me. It didn't come from me. It came through me. I was just quiet enough to let creative genius operate the way I do when I'm writing. I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, I was doing that, living, not just writing, but I wasn't even aware of it at the time. And so that's how I am here, without a great deal of thought about any of it. Not even, like I said, not even thought about, oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled people are signing. I don't even have that thinking about it. Which for someone who's, sober could be a little bit boring at times, where's all the drama? But way, way more content. And I say that sort of jokingly, really. But
of course. No, your students, I bring drama to you. Well, that is amazing. And it shows. And you really are in the ideal position. You might find it your ideal job, but you're certainly an ideal teacher. And
thank you.
I'm so blessed to know you and have you be my teacher. So thank you.
Thank you, Del. Thanks for having me on today. It's been wonderful to chat with you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.